as well. I want to welcome you to the CDSS Exchange. Basically, the CDSS Exchange is an ongoing departmental effort to expand awareness, increase interest, and hopefully to inspire one another about some of the important and valuable work being done in various programs here at CDSS through regular, informative, live-streamed and recorded presentations by some of the department's most talented and passionate division and program leads. The Exchange will provide a space for those programs to educate coworkers and hopefully the public at large about some of the invaluable work being done here in various programs at CDSS and the impact that they're having. We're particularly pleased today to be able to welcome Marcela Ruiz as our speaker this afternoon. As Chief of the Immigration and Refugee Programs Branch, Marcela works to develop, implement, and ensure safe, easy, and effective access to support programs and services for immigrants. Considering the substantial changes now being proposed and implemented on the national stage regarding immigration and our society's reception to it, we feel that Marcela's work is perhaps more pertinent and relevant than ever. And so we'd really like to give her a warm welcome and give us a welcome.
So thank you everyone for coming out. This is actually really inspiring to see so many people interested in this topic. What you've been seeing on the screen are images from the Migrant Caravan. I think you have probably all heard on the news. It's been reported on the Migrant Caravan that has reached Tijuana and Mexicali, thousands of people from Central America, mainly Guatemala and Honduras, who are making their way to the United States to seek asylum. So what I wanted to talk about today is maybe step back a little and talk about the changes in immigration at the broadest level, at a national level, and also in California. Talk a little bit about the demographics of California, the population of California, and then talk about the CDSS programs that we have here that work directly with immigrants. So I am going to shut this down and I may need your help. Sorry. Sorry.
Thanks for being here on Friday afternoon.
Bear with us. I think I was too ambitious and getting too many PowerPoints and videos. So while we get there we go. So this is a timeline. You probably can't read everything that's up here from where you're sitting. Maybe that's not the point. The point is that these up here are the changes in California laws that were passed and programs that were implemented to support immigrants. This is federal law. There were a few changes in 2016 and 2015 when the Obama administration promoted or established DAPA, Deferred Action for Parents of American Citizens, and DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. But what we've really seen a lot of activity is in 2017. Does anybody know what happened in 2017? So I just want to highlight a few of these, and this doesn't even capture what's happening in the courts. The Attorney General of California has been suing the Trump administration on immigration policies. The Attorney General of the United States has been suing California on our immigration policies, and a lot of these policies are tied up in the court system. So out the gate, the Trump administration first announced the travel ban. Does anybody remember the travel ban? Whatever happened to the travel ban, right? That seems like ages ago. So the travel ban was ultimately upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, and we have a travel ban in place for, I believe, it's 8 countries, mostly Muslim majority countries. At the same time, there was also a shift in the type of enforcement policies that the federal administration has now implemented. There is increased enforcement in the interior of the country. So by enforcement, I mean removal or deportation of immigrants. The Obama administration actually also removed quite a few people, and in fact, the numbers between the Trump administration and the Obama administration don't differ that much. What's different is that under the Obama administration, the advocacy organizations had worked very hard to have a priority list for deportation or removal to prioritize the removal of individuals with criminal records. The Trump administration, one of their first actions was to come in and say, we're no longer following that priority. So what you have now is a lot more enforcement in the interior with a lot more people without any sort of criminal record who are being removed from the country. I just want to add a little bit more context to that piece of it. The last amnesty, regularization, or opportunity for undocumented immigrants to be able to apply for a green card was in 1986. So you have people who have been living in this country for 30 plus years who may have zero opportunity to apply for any green card. You often hear people say, well, you know, why don't people just do it the legal way? Sometimes there is actually no avenue for people to apply to become legal permanent residents, even if they have been in the country for multiple decades. The Trump administration also announced the end of DACA, and at the same time, the state of California invested $20 million in order to support people who are eligible for DACA, apply for DACA. So who knows what's happening with DACA now? Anybody aware, or do we still have DACA? Don't we have DACA? Who thinks we still have DACA? Who thinks we don't? Okay. Kind of both true. So people who applied for DACA as of last year are still eligible to renew their DACA. But you have a lot of young people who would have been eligible for DACA, but for the termination of the program, who can no longer apply for DACA. There were other announcements made, policy pronouncements made by the Trump administration that are flying a little bit more under the radar and are more around humanitarian grounds. So one of those is under the Obama administration, the Department of Homeland Security had agreed that they would not detain in ICE detention facilities pregnant women. That's been reversed under the Trump administration. This year, there's a lot of activity in immigration. I think a lot more surfaced and became part of the public national conversation. We started off with the termination of temporary protected status. This impacts California, particularly for the Salvadoran community. Temporary protected status is something that is granted to individuals who are from countries that are either involved in civil war or where there has been some significant natural disaster. So, for example, Syrians have temporary protected status because you can't return Syrians to a war-torn country. So Salvadorans there are about 50,000 or so Salvadorans who have temporary protected status, have been in the country for several decades, and they're about to lose that status later on this year. Really importantly, USCIS changed its mission. It really changed its mission from being a mission about being a welcoming country to one that's really focused on enforcement. So again, that kind of flew under the radar a little, but I think missions really set the tone for organization and really are the driver around, or really kind of set the tone for the policies that an organization wants to advance. There was family separation and change to asylum procedures related to the caravan. Just briefly want to go over some of the changes in California law as they relate to immigrant Some significant changes have been the investment in legal services for immigrants, and those funds are administered out of this department. And in fact, immigration team, can you raise your hands? These are the folks who administer the funding. This department also has a Refugee Programs Bureau. Refugee Programs Bureau, can you raise your hand? I just love that they know this already and that they're here. So there has been a significant investment in legal resources for immigrants. It started off with an investment for unaccompanied minors, then more for the broader community, and this year there's going to be an investment in legal services for students in the UC system, in the state system, and also in community colleges. There has also been an expansion of benefits for undocumented children with the Medi-Cal expansion, and there have also been other policies meant to provide more social services, including workforce development for refugees and immigrants. So that's the landscape. Why does this matter for us? Whether or not you are passionate about immigrants and immigration, you can't fight these numbers in California. 25% of the population in California are immigrants. They can be naturalized immigrants, that includes naturalized immigrants, that includes legal permanent residents, that includes the undocumented population. Half of California's children live in immigrant households. And 1/3 of working age adults in California are immigrants. So when the state looks at its policies, when we look at the people we serve, we're serving a huge amount of immigrant population in this state. And so we have to be aware of what the special circumstances are for that population. You know, I don't know that I've been working in the world of immigration in some form or another, and working on immigrant-related issues, but I don't think this really became clear to me until about a few years ago, which is what the immigrant demographic looks like in California. I think I had a sense that the immigrant demographic was really Latino. But if you see over the past about, what is it now, 10 years, the immigrants from Asia is the fastest growing immigrant population in California. It's also the fastest growing undocumented immigrant population in California. So, as I mentioned earlier, for California, when we think about the policies we are trying to advance, we definitely have to keep in mind what a significant percentage of our population are immigrants. And this is a point of comparison. So one of the policies that is being proposed now by the federal administration is around public charge. Who here is familiar with public charge? Everybody? Okay, let me just, a little bit of background. So public charge is a rule in the immigration context only. It's not a public benefits rule, it's a rule in the immigration context. And if you are applying for a green card and you use public benefits in the immigration context, they could count it against you. So obviously for CDSS, this is a particular concern. And it's a particular concern to CDSS more than to California, more than to any other state, because look at these numbers, right? So these are the immigrant families, these are the immigrants and families, these are the immigrants and families receiving one of those 4 major public benefits, so Medicaid or Medi-Cal, CalFresh SNAP, CalWorks, and SSI. The next closest state is New York. There are about 5 million immigrants and families receiving a benefit in California. The next closest state is just above, a little bit around above 2 million. This is a huge potential impact in a state like California. We've been looking at this question of public charge because we're very concerned that immigrants are going to be very confused about what the rule actually means and who will be directly impacted. It's a very technical rule. It's very hard to understand, even for people who have been looking at this issue for a little bit. And we have the experience of immigration reform and public benefit reform from the late 1990s, where it was documented that many immigrant households, whether they were impacted directly by the changes in immigration law or public benefits law, many of them dropped off just because of the confusion that these systems create. And so the concern for CDSS is that families that are actually eligible for CalFresh, or families that are actually eligible for CalWorks, may forego those benefits because they think that it could impact them in a negative way in the immigration context. So we've been monitoring this very closely and strategizing around our outreach strategy for the immigrant community around this issue. I want to talk specifically about the CDSS programs that we administer that are related to immigration. As I mentioned earlier, we have the refugee program and we have the Immigration Legal Services Funding Program. The refugee program serves around, there had been about 13,000 refugees that arrive in California every year, and refugees are a special category of immigrants, and one of the only category of immigrants that's actually eligible for public benefits from the time they arrive in the United States. Most immigrants have to wait about 5 years before they're eligible for any form of public benefits. But refugees are eligible for cash and food assistance from the time of their arrival and other social services. That program also has the Unaccompanied Refugee Minor Program, which is kind of a foster care program for refugees who reach the United States on their own. And then we also provide services within the schools. We fund programs within the school system to provide supports for refugee students. The Immigration Legal Services Funding Program, that's a newer program. So the refugee program has been around for about 30 years. The Immigration Legal Services Funding Program is a newer program that was established around 3 years ago. Through that program, we work with nonprofit immigration legal services providers to provide representation to unaccompanied minors. I think we're probably all familiar with unaccompanied minors. These are mainly children from Central America who come to the United States, arrive on their own, and many of them are eligible for immigration relief. And so we have a set of providers who provide those legal services. We also provide legal services around removal defense, naturalization, and also DACA. But I would say all CDSS programs serve immigrants, right? These are the programs that are geared specifically to immigrants. But if you look at the populations that we serve in CalFresh or in CalWorks, a significant percentage of the population that we serve are either immigrants themselves or they are people in immigrant families. Now, I think that was maybe the last slide. So I'm going to open it up for questions in a second, but you know, I think one of the unfortunate sort of narratives out there is sort of a misunderstanding of why people make the choice to come to the United States. And I've been thinking a lot about this lately because we're thinking about moving, my family, and I'm thinking about moving to a different house. And actually I live in Stockton, so people ask me all the time, Marcela, would you move to Sacramento? And I think, well, my mom, she's 82, I live a block away from her. I wouldn't want to leave her. And my kids, they have this school that they love, and we have our social network. And I think we've probably all been in that situation where we're thinking about moving to a new community. we're thinking about changing jobs, we're thinking about some significant change in our lives, and we mull it over, right? So what would it take? What would my conditions need to be for me to decide that I want to disrupt my entire family's life and move to Sacramento, or move to another state, or move to another country where I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a job? I'm hoping I would. I don't know if I will be accepted. I'm hoping I will. I don't know if my children will thrive. I'm hoping that all of that will happen. I think that the amount of stress that I would have to be under for me to make that choice for myself or for my family would be significant. I don't think it's a decision that most people would take lightly. The other piece of this that I would say is, you know, once, wherever it is you move to, whether it's a new community, a new school, a new place of employment, we're all looking to establish connection, right? We're all looking to feel like we belong, to feel like we're accepted. And I think that many immigrants are looking precisely for that same feeling of acceptance and that same feeling of integration that we would all want to feel in any sort of new setting. And to that end, I think I'm going to have a client of one of our service providers communicate that. Julia, would you be able to help me here?
Washington, well, that's a different mood here in the desert. Training Occupational Development Education Community, or TODEC, is known for educating undocumented immigrants of their rights, but the organization is also quickly gaining a reputation now for offering something else, hope. Our Vince Marino is joining us live here in the studio right now. Vince, earlier I got a chance to speak with that woman who immigrated to the U.S. in 1984. Today, tears of joy streamed down her face after she was told something she has been waiting to hear for more than 30 years. Undocumented immigrants say the peace of mind they get from TODEC is invaluable. Amazing. I can't stop laughing and crying at the same time. TODEC provides undocumented immigrants legal counsel, information on their rights in the United States, and help with applying for citizenship. It's a great service because we can help them qualify. If they are low income, they don't have to pay a single nickel. The organization also works with law enforcement to clear up common misconceptions held by the immigrant community. We have a few situations where we have responded to calls for service and folks don't want to speak to us because they're concerned that we're going to deport them if they tell us that they are illegal. Just wanted to reassure them that we are still here for customs to serve them. At one point in her life, Marcela had little hope for the future and fell on hard times. I went to the wrong path. I started using drugs, and then I got to a program where they help me, recover my drug habit. When Marcela heard what TODEC was doing, she decided to give it a go. I came here because I saw the news that there were citizenship. Marcela desperately yearned to become a citizen, but thought it was out of reach. When she came to TODEC's new location in Coachella, she was stunned by what they told her. TODEC would help her gain citizenship free of charge, paying her $750. It's a blessing. You never think, people like me, people like me, people like me. The new TODEC location in Coachella is open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m.
There's something about that woman that for me is like so real, right? It really captures that sense of wanting to belong in your community after 3 years. So HODAC is an organization that operated out of Paris, California, and through the immigration funding expanded into Coachella to provide those services. And they've gotten a lot of press about their services in Coachella, and this is one of the press clips that they shared with us. And really, as this is a result of the leadership of the state of California, the leadership of this department, and all the hard work that everybody has done to support these programs in CDSS. So I think I probably went a little fast, but I want to open it up to questions. I don't know if folks have questions about any of the immigration policies or any of the programs here at CDSS. Have more chocolate as well.
What would you say, and maybe this is way too general, but maybe what would you say is the biggest challenge in general in your day-to-day work, and the thing you really, really want to live up to the most, and like maybe the biggest hurdle or the most?
So when I first came into CDSS, the state had announced a director of immigrant integration. And I think we all thought there would be a different political landscape on immigration, and the folks on the ground were actually getting prepared for changes in immigration law that would allow more people to get status. And then there was a complete reversal. I think what's the most challenging, when I step back, the most challenging is being able to still advance an a positive immigrant integration framework when you're having to respond to changes in immigration policy that are creating crises for people on the ground, for both the immigrant community, but also the organizations that we work with that support the immigrant community. And so it's trying to find that balance between responding to that urgent need, that is the need of sometimes of the week or of the month, and still having enough resource to be forward-looking and think about how do we inform, how immigrant kids are served in schools to make sure that they are successfully graduate and go on to college or have the career development opportunities. How do we make sure that, that English language learners, adult English language learners are receiving the types of services that are producing positive outcomes? I think right now in the time where we are, it's difficult to manage both conversations at the same time. I mean, that's at the broadest level. I think the challenge is real in that the immigration policy just changes so quickly. It's not an exaggeration to say that I think on a monthly basis we're dealing with kind of a new emerging crisis. So last year DACA was terminated in September. But then we had the wildfires with a significant impact on immigrant populations in Sonoma, so then we started working on that. And then temporary protected status was ended in January. So it just feels like every month, a couple of months, there's a significant sort of issue that we need to grapple with.
Could you tell us what the eligibility criteria are for the legal representation?
Sure. So there really are not strict criteria in the way that some of our public benefits programs have, but really for people who cannot otherwise afford an attorney. And so many of those organizations have multiple sources of funding. Many of the organizations that we fund have multiple sources of funding. I probably should have listed this, but the organizations that we fund, they're listed on our website, and it's about 100 organizations right now throughout the state. And some of them charge a small fee, not with our funding, but through their other programs. And so I think that anybody can go inquire and ask for services. One of the challenges is the capacity issues. They do have a lot of people calling them for services, and not every organization provides all of the type of services. So some organizations may specialize in naturalization, and other organizations can do removal defense. Removal defense cases are really complex cases, and so not every organization has the attorneys on board to be able to handle those types of cases.
I was wondering if you could share a little more about, I didn't know, and I never heard it so starkly, that there's often just no legal pathway once you're here, and especially now with the influx of asylum seekers, and what is that going to look like for people on the ground, and what's that doing for caseloads and all that kind of stuff? Where do you stay when all that's happening?
Sure. So I just remembered, I'm supposed to repeat the question. So the question was around explaining more what I commented on earlier, that some people don't have a pathway for any kind of legal remedy when it comes to immigration, and then what's going to happen to the asylum seekers that are currently at the border. So again, immigration law can be really complex. There is a set of criteria of inadmissibility, so in immigration law, and essentially it's if you've come into the country illegally, if you've committed any sort of crime, but just coming into the country illegally or overstaying a visa may make you inadmissible, meaning that you may be in the country, but you're not able to regularize your status in any way. And again, without getting into all the technicalities of immigration law, that bars a lot of people from actually getting their green cards. You also have to have an affirmative pathway to be able to get your status. You have to have either somebody sponsor you, a family member who's eligible to sponsor you, and there are only certain familial relationships that allow for that, or you have to fit into one of, like, I think it's A through Y categories of type of visas that are available. The asylum question is in flux right now. So I believe it was 2 weeks ago, the administration issued a new policy that people who enter the country at the southern border without inspection are not going to be eligible for asylum. It was immediately challenged in federal court in San Francisco, and there's actually a hearing on that today. The ACLU challenged that. So we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen to those folks who are currently at the southern border. We don't know if they will be able to pursue an asylum claim. Relatedly, about a few months ago, the administration also try to limit the types of asylum claims that could be brought. Many of you are probably very familiar with this, but the situation on the ground in Honduras in particular, there's a lot of violence. Honduras is one of the most violent countries, has one of the highest murder rates in the world. And a lot of that is gang violence. And so the federal administration a few months ago also announced that certain grounds for asylum would not be recognized: gang violence and domestic violence. So that really is going to create a lot of obstacles for the folks on the border. It also means that attorneys representing those individuals will have to invest a lot more resource, a lot more time, more energy, and being able to evaluate their eligibility and actually pursue their claims. I think everybody's sort of in a wait and see right now around how those individuals at the border will be treated, but there is a sense that all of those cases will be very complex. Go ahead.
Just a follow-up, was there any challenge to that policy change that gang violence and domestic violence weren't valid reasons?
I am pretty sure there was. I think that any major policy pronouncement by the administration right now is being challenged either by state attorneys general, and California State Attorney General is challenging at least 2 or 3 of the federal immigration policies, or being challenged by advocacy groups like the ACLU or the National Immigration Law Center.
So just wanted to get your perspective as someone who's, helming a program that's really on such a controversial subject that gets a lot of news coverage and all that. And as with any controversial subject, every side of the issue always is sure that they know what they're talking about. What would you say is maybe the most important or the most destructive misconception that you feel is really holding things back and really just sort of counterproductive?
So the question is, what is the most destructive sort of narrative or misconception around immigration? I would say it's the notion that people have a choice, that people have a choice about, first of all, where you're born, what conditions you're born into, or that you have a choice of the economic conditions of your country, or that you have a choice to do things the legal way or not. I think at the end of the day, it's a matter of really kind of putting yourself, understanding and putting yourself in the shoes of the people who are making the choice, I guess, who are making the decision to leave their countries. What would it take for you to send your child across a river, right? Or what would it take for you to send your child on a march thousands of miles to another country? And I don't think human beings were all that different, right, in that sense, that we all love our kids and we love our family and we love our community, even when the conditions in our community are not great. I think ultimately it takes a lot of social conditions around us for us to come to that decision. And I think it's just forgetting that. I think it's a little bit unfair to say that we're a nation of immigrants in the sense that not everybody chose to come to the United States, right? But we've all been in situations where we've had to move, or we've had to bring change about to our families or to ourselves, and just think about how challenging that is. What a challenging and stressful human experience that is. But to me, when we talking about poverty or talking about immigration, I think the biggest misconception is that it's a matter of choice only.
If there are individuals that are looking for resources, what do you think the best avenue for?
Sure. So if there are individuals who are looking for immigration resources, our website, the CDSS Immigration Services Funding website, has a list of all of the providers that CDSS funds, and it's organized by county, and so people can go onto our website and find providers there. We're about to make our funding announcement in the next couple of weeks for the next round of funding for this coming year.
Wondering what else is being done at the state through the Director of Immigration Office. I know they released the website.
So the question was, what else is happening at the state level through the Director of Immigrant Integration? At that level, there has been, I think, a lot of coordination in response to California's relationship with the federal government and the position that California is taking versus the federal government and the lawsuits. But I think on the immigrant integration front, there has also been a lot of coordination around workforce development and English language acquisition. So bringing those actors, those players, whether it's Labor Workforce Development Agency, CDE, adult ed, and community colleges around a conversation about how we can better provide services and improve workforce outcomes and English language acquisition outcomes for immigrants. I think that's been besides the legal services for immigrants, that's been sort of the largest policy conversation that the state's having. That's it for questions. So thank you all very much for spending your lunchtime talking about immigration, and really enjoyed having this conversation with you. And if you have any questions, I'm also available after this. Thank you.